Hey everyone, this is Jake Bivens. We appreciate you taking the time to join us today, and we hope that everybody is staying safe and healthy out there. So with many of us at home, we really wanted to share some practical uses with 3D and highlight some ways that we can still train at a high level and keep the engine going with our athletes. So that's even when we're at home and we have limited space or resources. And I'm sure many of the coaches on this call are familiar with PVC pipe and its uses in training. But today I wanted to go through creating a few drills using biofeedback in K-baseball. So all you'll need if you were to do this at home would be a PVC pipe. I've got a 5-foot one here and your system. So no ball or tee is really required. But in this, we'll go through a player example flow so you can gain a better understanding of why we're doing these exercises with this player. And I'll also be joined by my partner, Kyle Crawford. He and I will be monitoring the comments and questions section, so please feel free to ask any questions that come up. We'll try to get to all of them. And to ask the question, go to the question panel in the menu and type. And Kyle, if you'd like to say a few things.
Yeah, hey everybody. I hope you're all staying safe during this, and we're all really excited to kind of kick off this webinar series here. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jake, and we'll just dive right in.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to get this going. So we'll jump in here. We'll get into 2 drills being set up and trained. All right, so we're on the home page now, and you can see that my client profile is loaded in the top left corner. The next step is to head into training and biofeedback, and once here, we can start to build a new program for myself or the player that I'm working with. So for this player flow, we'll assume that we've identified 2 opportunities for improvement with their swing. One being that they were losing posture early in the swing, really bending over and getting north of 40 degrees of positive torso bend at heel strike. And one note here is that we'll notice good hitters start setting their posture early in the swing, depending on the location of the pitch. So this metric does vary based on pitch and pitch type. But with this player's swing, we noticed that they were losing posture regardless of the pitch location, which meant that in order to get on plane with the ball, especially high pitches, high inside velocity, they had to make big inefficient adjustments in order to do so. So these added movements slowed down their time to contact, caused sequencing issues, and hindered efficient energy transfer in the swing. So in biofeedback, we'll train posture at heel strike, posture and side bend during the turning phase, and then side bend to contact. Our goal is to create an efficient, connected swing. And in conjunction with this, I'll be using a PVC pipe. So I'm sure many of the coaches on this call are familiar with the PVC pipe and even use it in their training and coaching. So right now I have a 5-foot PVC pipe that I'll hold across my chest and cross my arms in front of it to kind of keep it in place. And I'll share a video of me training this so you can have a better image if you're still unfamiliar. So we're going to also assume that this player has passed a professional mobility screen and injury screen, and that they're really capable of making these movements in their swing. So let's get into it. So when working with the swing, I'm going to select the yellow icon here. This will allow me to customize a training program for myself or the hitter that I'm working with. And the first drill that we'll add is alignment turn. You can see it pops up on the right, and I'll click the pencil icon to edit this. So I'm going to change the movement name to heel strike. And this is just indicating that this is what I'll train and this is what I'll see at this point in the swing. So I'm going to set torso turn to -15 degrees with a tolerance of 5 degrees. And then I'm going to turn off pelvis turn and turn on forward bend of the torso and set that at 22 degrees with a tolerance of 6 degrees. And remember that this player was getting to 40 degrees of bend in their swing, so this is a big adjustment that they'll be training here. So I'll close that for now. And the next thing we'll set up is positioning for the turn. And because I'm customizing these, I'll add another alignment and just edit this. So I'm going to change the name here to turn and turn on torso turn and torso side bend. So I'm going to set the torso turn to 35 degrees, which is somewhere between first move and contact with a tolerance of 8 degrees. So I'll keep that. And right now we're training for the pitch down the middle. So I'll set this side bend here at 23 degrees with a tolerance of 5. So this position will kind of force me or the player that I'm working with to get on plane really early in that turn. So we'll close that and then we'll add one last drill here. So now I'll actually choose, I'll choose side bend, and I'll change this to contact, because this is what we'll be training at contact. And I'm only going to select torso side bend, and I'm going to set this to 25 degrees, keep the tolerance at 8 degrees. So you'll start to notice that my bend at heel strike, my side bend at the turn, and side bend at contact are all within a few degrees of each other, which is really important as we start to train this connected swing. So as you can see, I have heel strike, turn, contact, and the next step is to launch and train all activities. So as you can see, this is my 3D avatar, and as I move, we see the movement here on the screen. So first thing I want to do now is calibrate.
Calibration in 2, 1. Calibration complete.
And the next thing I want to do is link these exercises so I can kind of train in a real progression here. So I'll start training now. So you can see that as I hit each of my parameters, and I was really, having trouble getting to the first one, but I would start to get those visual and auditory cues, and that would allow me to continue to move to the next position. A rep would count down, and in a normal training session, I would probably do this exercise, 3 sets of 10 reps each. So now I'll drop in a video of me actually doing this live so you can have a better understanding of what that looks like. Okay, so as I mentioned before, there were 2 opportunities for improvement with this player's swing. The second characteristic that we noticed was that, this player was not creating enough X-factor stretch or separation in the swing. So separation is basically the difference in turn between the pelvis and torso rotation at any point in the swing. This number will vary from player to player based on their mobility and body type, but it is crucial metric for coiling energy in your body and then uncoiling that for maximum power output. So we want to make sure that this player is in the best position to succeed based on their movement capabilities and their profile. So for this player profile, we found that they were a hypermobile athlete, but still weren't creating much X-factor stretch in the swing. And, many coaches like to see a player's maximum X-factor around first move. So that's what we'll train today in biofeedback. So I'm going to remove these. And again, we'll be using a PVC pipe as an aid. The 5-foot pipe will be placed in the ground behind us with both hands gripping it in an attack position. And as we create the separation, the PVC will, start to bend, and we can begin to feel our core start to really tighten and coil up. So we're back on the training builder screen now. You can see we have a blank slate to the right there. And, after my swings, we've noticed that my swings are the player swings that I'm working with. They were only creating around 5 degrees of separation at first move, which based on the mobility was too low. So we're going to want to work on increasing that number. So we'll load up alignment, and we're going to edit that and change the name again to, we'll do X factor at first move. We'll edit the torso turn to -20 with a tolerance of 3. So we'll make it difficult on the hitter here. And then we are going to select pelvis turn, and pelvis turn will be -5 with a tolerance of 5. So right there, that you can really see that I'm trying to get myself or the player that we're working with to create separation that's around 15 degrees. Because that's the difference of the two metrics that I set there, and that's a parameter that we think this player is capable of doing and will be successful doing so. So we'll close this and we'll launch. So as you can see, this training aid really forced me to fire my pelvis independently of the torso to create that separation. You can throw on the metrics to get a better visual of that, and really start to create that separation and really feel that movement that we're trying to train here. So here is a video of me actually training this drill. Alrighty, so I hope you guys enjoyed that quick run through of creating the biofeedback exercises using a PVC pipe, and I was able to do that just in my living room here, so you really don't need much space to do that, but can be very effective drills for working with the player or just continuing to keep that engine going. One thing I'll add is if you guys do want to ask questions, you can do it in the go-to meeting bar in the questions panel. And Kyle, did we receive any questions, or are there any questions that we should answer?
Yeah, we did get a couple. I wanted to send one your way for sure. That is, should we be using the same numbers for every hitter? And kind of with that, how did you come up with those degrees for that player and the variance for them, the tolerance?
Yeah, good question. So when we're looking at setting up those numbers and the parameters for the hitters, we do want to make that specific to the player that we're working with. So we have ranges that we like to work around, whether it's a 10-degree range or 15-degree range, depending on the metric. But, based on variables and players' body types, how they move, those are probably going to be different for each player, and we want to make sure that we're customizing to that player. So with the ones that I set up, these were based off where I wanted myself to be, and so that's why I put those numbers in there. And then with the variance of the range that I was setting, the tolerance, you can change that to make it more difficult or easier when training these biofeedback exercises. So it really depends on how tough you want to make it on the hitter and how progressed they are in your training program. So if it's a new hitter that is just starting to train these drills and these movements, you might want to make that a little bit larger, say 10 degrees of tolerance, just so they're comfortable and they can start working towards that. But for me, I wanted to make them a little bit more difficult, so I shortened those up. But again, that's more of a coaching opinion and however you want to run that.
Okay, hey, Jake, let's say that you really do want to do some of this biofeedback training with someone, but they're already falling within that range. Is it still worth doing these drills with them?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you're creating good habits in your swing and you notice that, you want to continue to build on those good habits. So that's, again, where the tolerance comes into play. You can continue to train these movements even when the player is doing a great job of getting in them, if you notice that in their swings, but you can make the tolerance really small. So when you're training with them, it's great to make it difficult on hitters that already are doing these correctly. So yeah, it's very worth training even if they're doing this and they're in the ranges.
Awesome, thanks. And then also, how is a good way to know if any of this training that I'm doing with them is paying off?
Yeah, so the great thing about the K-Baseball software is we have tiles in capture mode. So what we can do in tiles is really get live feedback, almost like a launch monitor of the player's swing and the metrics that they're creating in their swing. So if you do work with a player for a couple of weeks and you're training these drills, you can then hop into tiles, put them in more of a live cage session, whether it's off of velocity or however you're training, and after each swing you can see on tiles if they're falling within the parameters that you set. So it's just a good thing to have when you're working with a player, and you can start to really track their progress through tiles and even other places in the software where you can look to see if they're improving.
So when in regards to separation, how much separation do you see some elite MLB hitters having?
Yeah, so that's pretty dependent on the player themselves. We'll see, some more tighter movers, create 5 to 10 degrees of separation, and that can go all the way up to 30, 35 degrees for, very hypermobile players. So that one will vary quite a bit, but it is an important metric to create some type of separation. And I think that's where, screening your players and understanding their body types are important, so you can understand the ideal X factor that they want to be in. So it really ranges for MLB guys.
Awesome. And then also, do you have to have a PVC pipe to be able to train with the biofeedback?
You do not. I wanted to use the PVC pipe for this webinar because, it's a very common training tool and a lot of coaches use it. But if you just have a system, you can use biofeedback, obviously with a baseball bat and in a cage session with the tee, if you have the space to do so. And, if you don't have a PVC pipe, you could use, a golf club or something around the house to really train these movements. But that's what's great about biofeedback is you don't need a PVC pipe to train, and you can really understand how the player is moving and really train to those metrics.
Are there any PVC movements that you like to do during a swing or actually holding the PVC like a bat with clean turns, etc.?
Yeah, absolutely. The PVC pipe, you can use it for a ton of different kind of training uses, and I've seen it used 10 to 15 different ways in different coaching sessions. So I just wanted to highlight these two because they're pretty common, but yeah, absolutely, that'd be a great way to use this and even use it in biofeedback.
Okay. And this is a really good one that we've had come up quite a few times here, Jake. Kind of in line with some of the things you've been doing, but maybe you can expand on a little bit. Is there a strategy for fitting a hitter with the best bat for their swing using K-motion?
Yeah, we've seen a lot of organizations use the K-Vest and use K-motion to bat fit their players. What's great about it is, you can get that player signature movement, and then you can be able to compare it to, how their movement changes from one bat to another. So when it comes to the kinematic sequence graphs, we can see the patterns they create and how efficient they're moving, and at which speed too, the angular velocity. So when you're trying different bats to be able to compare those metrics, it's an incredible tool to be able to make sure that that player is, getting their best swing off with the best bat. So bat fitting is definitely something that a lot of organizations, academies, facilities, schools use our system for, just to make sure that, their players are getting their best swings off with that size bat.
Awesome. And then, Jake, what's a good place that you recommend someone new to this technology to go to learn some of the technology and metrics that we're going over here?
Yeah, so we actually have a really incredible level 1 baseball certification. You can find it on our website. It's with Justin Stone, and he does, a phenomenal job of really diving into the system and explaining how to use it in player development. So that's kind of the first place that I'd recommend looking, is the, our K-Baseball Level 1 certification. And we'll continue to do these webinars as well, so we can try to educate, everybody that has a system or doesn't have a system, to make sure that you kind of get a better understanding of what you can do and the capabilities.
Awesome. They're going to be a level 2 certification coming anytime.
Hope so.
For a little clarification on this one, it's something that we've definitely been discussing and would like to do. We've been putting together some concepts for it and what we want to go over it, but we kind of need the world to go back a little bit to normal before we can really get to producing some good content for it. Let's see. Jake, do we have any information that we can access that shows working ranges with K-Motion based on range of mobility from physical assessments?
That would be probably, our certification would be a great place to start. I think that Justin Stone touches on, the player's mobility and applying that to the swing in our certification. So I'd start there. Another great thing to do is, TPI certifications, on-base use certifications. Those are extremely valuable to understanding how a player moves and then applying it to the K-Vest. Got anything else, Kyle?
All right, Jake, we're getting a shout out here from your from the Tigers, your manager back in 2017, Rafael Gill.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. Yep, played. Yeah, so a little background. I played with the Tigers for a short while. Coach Gill was my coach down in the GCL. So it's glad to see you on. Hope you're doing well.
And just this one's come up a couple times too. I just want to throw out there. Yeah, we'll be sending out a link after this with a recording of the webinar so that you guys can access it and go back to it, especially a couple of you guys that had some audio issues at the beginning. Jake, can you go through a few of your best and most used PVC pipe drills outside of what we've covered? If there's anything else that you like to do with them, kind of walk us through.
Yeah. So these are really the two kind of main ones that I stick to. Another good one that you can utilize is similar to what we were doing to, when I was holding it across my chest. You can do that kind of on the pelvis and the waist of the player. So something important that we noticed in our software that you can measure is hip hinge. So creating hip hinge early and then really exploding the pelvis as you're making contact with the ball. So, putting the PVC pipe across the belt and doing a similar movement as I was doing when I was across my chest, and just being able to get an understanding of how they're holding that hip hinge early in the swing, and then releasing it at contact. And again, that'd be a great one to set up in biofeedback. As we know, kind of pelvis is one of the big things that drives the swing, that lower half. So that's a really good one that I would use as well.
One sec, Jake, here. This is a good one coming in here. How can KVS be used with overload and underload drills? What parameters do you suggest using to indicate the improvement there?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's another great tool that, a lot of our customers and people we work with really utilize is kind of the overload, underload. And, there's so many metrics that we can start to look at, similar to bat fitting. We can look at, how well the player is decelerating, some of the speeds they're creating, and this really gets into the kinematic sequence graphs, and we can see, how that's affecting their swing and the progression that they're making. So when using those tools, again, it's a good thing to use in tiles even, to be able to see those metrics live time, and then really dive into the kinematic sequence graphs to look at, speed gain, speed transfer, up the chain, deceleration, acceleration rates, and timing as well.
All right. Awesome. Thanks, Jake. And then, Jake, are you ever available to provide live instruction for K-Motion, or are there any other instructors available?
Yeah, so that's what's great about, the community that we've built with K-Motion is, there's systems all across the country. There's coaches all across the country that have taken certification. They're certified. They've been using the system, and they're extremely knowledgeable in that. So, being able to find a coach is really important that uses KVest, and there's a lot of them across the country that are extremely knowledgeable. So, Kyle, do we have a tool where you can actually locate coaches that are certified? Do you know?
Right now, we're on the base side, but if you want to email into us on our K-Motion website, we'll help you get in touch with somebody in your region.
Yep.
Let's see. All right. Sorry, we got some coming in here. What factors go into ideal torso bend at foot strike?
Yeah, torso bend at foot strike. So we're looking at the player's posture there and what they're setting up for at the swing. So one thing to take into account is, I think I mentioned this, but the pitch location will dictate that metric. Sometimes, really good hitters will start setting up for the pitch at heel strike, so that torso bend will vary there. And again, that's why it's good to, when you're capturing with the KVest, to note what kind of pitches you were taking off for these captures, location, speed, was it a velocity machine or flips? So you can start to understand where this player gets with their posture, depending on what pitch is coming in. So, if it's a lower pitch and they can recognize that early, they're going to create more posture bend at heel strike, whether it's 35 degrees or somewhere up in that range. And if they recognize a high pitch early, it'll be more towards 15 degrees. And then again, you always have to take into account the player, their strength, their body type, their mobility, so you can understand, what is optimal for them. But again, we do like to work off some type of range, but it is very individualized there.
Awesome. This one's really good here. When doing the separation drill that you were doing there, Jake, should there be focus on the back arm slotting at the same time or staying up?
Yeah, I guess it depends on, at which point in the swing you're doing that. So, if you want to teach, the back arm slotting, and when in that swing that happens. And this gets a little kind of advanced and in depth, but and when you want to create that X factor stretch, exact moment in the swing. So you can start to really play with the timing in biofeedback, where the hitter is and where you want that back arm to slot. And again, that's really up to the coach, and that's why we keep it so customizable.
Awesome. And then, Jake, have you run into the dilemma of seeing a productive hitter that's got a poor kinematic sequence? This is a common one that we run into every time we're on site with someone.
Yeah, so I would say there's somewhat of a difference between an efficient hitter and an effective hitter. We really want our every one of our hitters to be extremely efficient for many reasons. But there's a lot of great hitters that really don't have great kinematic sequences. And when I say a lot, I mean it's kind of rare, but there is a decent amount that can just get up there and hit the baseball, and they're athletes and they're extremely talented individuals. But when we're just looking at a lot of different hitters, we want to make sure they're as efficient as possible.
Awesome. Hey, Jake, this one's kind of twofold. Does this work using live pitching, what we were doing there? But if so, what kind of data parameters, that kind of thing, do we have to worry about?
Yeah, so usually when we're getting a baseline for a player, we recommend utilizing a velocity machine. That way, it's very controllable, and you can notate fastball down the middle and what the player is doing at that point. When we do see live pitching, I mean, that's what we're going to see in the game. So that's really what we want to train as well. Again, you want to notate, the pitcher, left-handed, right-handed, pitch location, pitch velocity, pitch type. And then that can really tell you a lot about your hitter. If there's off speed and they struggle to decelerate, or they're getting, over-rotated, just a few examples, maybe that's something to look at. So it's important to train to different pitches because they're going to be seeing different pitches in games, and you want to understand how their body moves based on those pitches. But when we get in a baseline, we want to see some velocity, and we want to give the hitter a chance to get their best swing off, is usually how we go about that.
Let's see. I think we might be coming to a close here. Give it one more minute for any new questions to come in here. Are the coaches that we would be recommended, are they all level 1 certified? It's a good one.
They would be certified. That's kind of a prerequisite for being, an expert at this system. And we do recognize, there are non-certified coaches that are extremely knowledgeable. So that's kind of more case by case, but yeah, they will be certified. We would hope.
All right. What's the best way to use the KVS in a group setting that you've seen, Jake?
Yeah, so I know I didn't get into putting on the sensors and firing up the software too much, but it's very quick to work with multiple hitters. You just got to take the garments off, put them on the new player, load their client profile, and calibrate the player. And Kyle, I mean, I think you were out working with a ton of players at one point where you were getting 10, 15 guys through in 15 minutes or whatever it was.
Yeah, we were doing some pretty big baseball camps where we were having, over 100 guys that we were trying to cycle through in a couple hours, and we got through all of them. So it can be done quickly. So it kind of depends on your setting, and if that's what you're intending to do is try to get the most data on the most people possible, it definitely can be done. And if you have any questions on some good kind of workflows for things like that, please feel free to email into us at K-Motion, and we would love to kind of talk through some of those workflows with you, because it does get a little complicated in case-by-case basis. It's different for when you're working with 20 hitters than when you're working with 200 of them. So definitely shoot us a message, and we can kind of help you break down what your specific scenario is and how we can work with it better. Let's see. Jake, do we ever use the K-Vest with other tech like blast sensors, hit tracks, etc.?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of the MLB organizations that we work with use, ball flight monitor. They use different bat sensors. And this is just a really good way to get even a greater understanding of the swing, seeing what the body is doing and then seeing the outcome with, the ball flight monitors, exit velocity, things like that. So we kind of consider ourselves the cause and the ball is the effect. So what we can do to the cause, what we can do to the player's swing and their body, and how that's going to affect metrics, with ball flight and different things like that. So that is a thing that a lot of our coaches do, is utilize multiple technologies at once.
All right, awesome. And then what's one of the more difficult hitting habits to improve overall that we've seen the K-Vest try to tackle?
That's a great question. A lot of hitters that we see will really tend to fire their hands and have, a hand dominant swing. So that's really what's driving the swing, is their hands getting to the baseball. But how that affects their efficiency and their K-Motion efficiency graphs is usually negative. So we want to really create a swing from the ground up and sequence correctly. So pelvis, torso, lead arm, and hand, instead of hand, pelvis, torso, arm, and kind of have a different numbered sequence there. So that's a big one that we see, especially with younger athletes and younger hitters, is the hands driving the swing, which will, decrease efficiency and power, because we want them to be efficient. So that's a tough one. And a lot of times, strength comes into play, and really just teaching them the mechanics of a properly sequenced swing is important there.
Awesome. Thanks, Jake. And then going back to using K-Vest for bat fitting, what differences between swings should we be looking at to really indicate that this is an ideal bat for that particular player?
Yeah. For an example, if you give a younger athlete a much larger bat, one that's too big for them, they're going to, internally rotate too much. They're going to create extremely steep planes with their shoulders. So that could be a good indicator, maybe the bat's too heavy. They're really internally rotating, and then that would cause them to fall out of sequence or be late to the pitch. So you can look at the body metrics. You can also look at the kinematic sequence graphs. You can look at how well the player is accelerating and decelerating, and that tells us, how efficiently they're transferring energy, as well as the speed gains, which is kind of the distance north and south between each of the body segments. And you can start to look at, with this bat, how well are they transferring energy up the chain, and does it get worse with the smaller bat or, the different size bat. So there's a lot of different areas you can look in the software, but that was just kind of an example that we've seen. Awesome.
Then what age group do you see most hitters start using this K-Vest?
Yeah, we usually, see around, youth athletes, when they're 7 or 8 years old, you can really start to get good metrics on here and start building those habits really early with those players. You're going to have to keep in mind that, they're really lacking in the physical strength that they'll develop. They're extremely hypermobile, and some of these metrics will be pretty, out of the range compared to what pros do. But it's still good to see, how that player moves, and try to get them in good habits when they're at that age. So, we've seen this used with, very, very young players all the way up to, 15-year big leaguers. So it really ranges, and you can really understand how their body moves.
Awesome. Does anyone have any more questions? Oh, here we go. This is a good one that we could probably do an entire webinar on, but maybe if you want to start kind of touching on it, Jake, and maybe we'll work something into our webinars in the future. What are some drills to kind of help improve deceleration patterns?
Yeah, I agree that could be a full webinar. And, we've seen a lot of different things for trying to improve deceleration because of how important we believe it is, and how we can measure it in the K-Vest, with the K-Vest and the K-Baseball software. And, sometimes we have to decide, is it a strength issue that they're not decelerating? Is it mechanical? Is it mobility? Or, have they had an injury in the past, that they can't really decelerate any of these surge segments? So, generally I've seen coaches use med ball exercises, different, they'll utilize force plates to see how well they're putting force into the ground. And, just trying different things to be able to decelerate and send energy up the chain. But again, I think you first have to understand, is it strength, is it mobility, is it mechanical, and then we can move from there. And like Kyle was mentioning, that could be a full webinar on different things. And there's a lot of experienced coaches that have their tried and true drills. So that's a great question.
And then, hey, Jake, kind of backtracking a few questions here. Can you also touch on how different age players are going to have different pelvic speeds, and they're not going to be to scale because of things such as their diameter and that pelvic diameter and that kind of thing?
Yeah, kind of answered the question in the question there. Size and the diameter of these younger athletes' pelvis will come into play. In our certification, Justin goes through I believe it's a real speed equation to understand, how that youth athlete can really compare to an older hitter based on their size. So you can start to compare these players better. But that will come into play, and it's something you need to take into account, is that, these younger athletes will turn extremely fast compared to, a larger professional player.
Jake, what's a good way to kind of start telling the difference between if it's a strength issue or a mobility issue?
Yeah, I think that's when you really have to loop in, if you have a strength conditioning staff, if you have a medical staff, in using their expertise to understand this player. I know TPI really hones in on kind of having that pit crew and having the constant communication of all the coaches in the organization. And I think, if they're just hitting coaches, like so a lot of the coaches on this call, myself, we'd need to talk to, strength conditioning coaches and the fitness professionals to understand, where is this player falling short and what can we do to help him?
And just to kind of piggyback on that, I've always personally think that it's incredibly important that one of the first things you do with a player is just a physical assessment of them to kind of see how they're moving. Even if you can't really tell if it is a strength or mobility issue at that point, you can at least tell something's up with their movement, and you can kind of then direct them. Maybe if you do have if you're in the confines of a hitting academy that doesn't really have that kind of strength and conditioning group on site, maybe you can buddy up with somebody that locally that you can send them to kind of help drive traffic between the two of you. What would cause a hitter to have a really good pelvic rotation speed but lack a speed gain into the torso?
Yeah, that's a good one. So when we're looking at speed gain, we're looking at how well the player transfers that energy. So, a lot of times when they are moving that pelvis extremely fast, due to an inefficiency in their swing, or it could be many things, that torso isn't moving fast. Maybe it's the hands taking over early in the swing. So the torso really lacks speed. And because of that, pelvis is moving so fast, there's a very small speed gain there. So then you're going to try to work backwards and, understand where that inefficiency is, and attack that. And then you can see how the speed gain improves. And, maybe it is even the pelvis slows down a little bit in acceleration just to, increase the speed gain and get better energy transfer between those two segments.
All right. Looks like we've kind of reached the bottom of the list on the questions there, Jake.
Awesome.
If anyone does have any other questions they think of, please feel free to email us into the K-Motion website, and we'll be more than happy to kind of address them for you after the fact.
Cool. Well, if nobody has any more questions, we want to thank everybody for joining us today. And we, again, hope that everybody's staying safe and healthy. And thank you for all the questions that we received and for hopping on with us. And then look for, future webinars. We're planning to do over rotation at contact in the next, week or two to continue to have these conversations and, build the educational community. So again, thank you for joining us. And if Kyle, if you don't have anything else, we'll go ahead and sign off.
Yeah, I think I'm all good on my end. Thank you guys for joining, and hope to see you guys next time.
Thanks, everyone.